Tonight, on Crime Stories, he dressed like a clown to make children laugh. But behind the face paint was a man who tortured and murdered. He was John Wayne Gacy.
When this whole thing is over, you might be witnessing one of the most horrible crimes, perhaps, in a century.
He claimed to be a loving father.
See, I don't believe in hitting children.
But what he did to his young victims was unspeakable.
It was terrible, and the smell of death was everywhere.
How he killed those boys for his own pleasures. How could you forgive him?
To the end, John Wayne Gacy proclaimed his innocence.
Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, because you will have executed somebody that didn't commit the crime.
This is Crime Stories. I'm Richard Belzer. Imagine the nightmare. Your child is missing and you don't know what happened until one day a horrifying discovery. Your lost child is found, brutally murdered and buried in the basement of a man who was addicted to killing. The nightmare comes true not once or twice, but 33 times. The work of a man whose name became synonymous with evil, John Wayne Gacy, one of the most notorious serial killers of all time.
Spring 1992. Killer John Wayne Gacy tries to rewrite history.
When they paint the image that I was this monster who picked up like these altar boys along the street and swatted them like flies, I said, this is ludicrous.
The prison interview came 13 years after Gacy had been convicted of murdering 33 young men and boys from 1972 until 1978.
Whether it's Berkowitz, whether it's Bundy, whether it's Williams, Wayne Williams down in Atlanta, or any of the others, or Charlie Manson. See, I don't comment about other cases for the simple fact is that I wasn't there.
Do you feel somewhat of a kinship with some of these people?
God, I hate that when they put me in the same club with them.
With his execution date just months away, Gacy, then 51, was seeking a new trial.
If people don't want to know the truth and the honesty of it, if they want to be convinced or brainwashed into what they believe, then fine, then go ahead and kill me. But vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, because you will have executed somebody that didn't commit the crime.
But the evidence against him was overwhelming. Evidence that didn't come together until December 1978, when a 15-year-old boy disappeared. He was one of a number of boys who had disappeared in the Chicago area, but something about him was different. The boy was Rob Peast, a sophomore in high school who worked part-time at the Nissan pharmacy in the northwestern suburbs of Chicago. On December 11th, at quitting time, he told his mother he was going to talk to a man about a construction job, but Rob Peast never made it home. His parents finally ended up at the police department to fill out a missing persons report on their youngest son. At the time, the man in charge of the state's attorney's office was Terry Sullivan.
One young police officer happened to come up the one morning, and he said, Terry, there's a couple that was here last night reporting their son missing, and I think there's something strange to it. I don't believe that he's a runaway.
Sullivan agreed. Rob Peast was the consummate good kid, devoted to his family, an honors student who wanted to be an astronaut. There was no reason for him to run away. Something was wrong. Immediately, a search was organized. His parents were devastated.
I went to pick up Rob at the drugstore where he works at about 10 to 9. And he says it would take a few minutes, that he wanted to talk to this contractor about a job. And then with that, I started browsing around the store, and I'd never seen him since.
For police, the most obvious lead was the contractor Rob had gone to meet. His name was John Gacy. As it turned out, Gacy often hired young boys. 2 days after Rob disappeared, Sullivan called Gacy into the police station.
And he basically just said he had no idea what we were talking about. He denied even knowing the kid, and in frustration, I had said to him that, well, I understand that you don't want to say anything, but we've got evidence that, in fact, you were seen with him very recently.
Soon after that confrontation in mid-December 1978, police began tracking the movements of John Wayne Gacy. Meantime, a simple background check revealed that Gacy had been convicted 10 years earlier in Iowa. The charge was sodomy. The victim, a teenage boy. Gacy was released from the Iowa Men's Reformatory after serving only 18 months. Because of Gacy's record, a 24-hour surveillance was ordered. David Hackmeister, then a 6-year veteran of the department and a young father of 3, was assigned to the job.
I knew that, in fact, they thought that this could be a homicide. They asked me to keep surveillance on the house.
It soon became obvious that a concealed surveillance of John Gacy would be impossible. Gacy often drove over 60 through city streets. Over several days, frustration grew as two-man teams followed Gacy on fruitless journeys throughout metropolitan Chicago.
His personality could change in a split second. You know, one second we're his best buddy, we're his bodyguards that he's introducing us people to, and the next second we'll go into another bar and we're from the FBI who are harassing him.
As the days went on, there was still no sign of Rob Piest. His family posted his picture throughout the neighborhood. Then, a lead. Gacy told the surveillance team that he owned some land up north in Wisconsin.
So right away we're thinking that's where the body is. Of course, he's feeding us this information knowing that we're going to follow up on this, just kind of leading us off the track.
Work at the state's attorney's office was more productive. The investigators had obtained a search warrant for Gacy's house, based on Gacy's sodomy conviction 10 years earlier in Iowa.
My hopes, of course the hopes of the police officers and my fellow state's attorneys, was that we would find Rob alive.
When police investigators entered Gacy's home, it was fastidiously neat. They collected an assortment of items: handcuffs, garter belts. One officer picked up a photo receipt from Nissan Pharmacy. But of all the items found, one of the most chilling was a class ring. It was quickly learned that the ring belonged to a recent high school graduate named John Zick, who, like Rob Piest, was missing. It was just the beginning. Through interviews with Gacy's acquaintances, it was discovered that 2 employees of Gacy's were also missing: Gregory Godzik and Johnny Butkovich. Both 17 years old, both had not been heard from for at least 2 years. An unmistakable pattern began to emerge, linking Gacy to missing boys.
So it was as if a trickle had started, and now all of a sudden it's turned into a waterfall.
It was then that the investigators got 2 final breaks. First, a fellow employee of Rob Piest revealed that she had put her photo receipt in Piest's jacket. That receipt was the same one found in Gacy's house. It provided a critical link, proving that John Gacy had contact with Rob Piest the night Rob disappeared. And there was more. Interviews with Gacy's employees revealed they had been asked by Gacy to dig trenches for new plumbing in the crawl space beneath the house. The story triggered a memory for a detective who had once used the bathroom in Gacy's house.
Mind you, again, it's cold winter, and the furnace came up from bringing the fumes up from downstairs. Now, being an experienced homicide detective and detective, Schultz came back and said that he recognized the odor of bodies decaying.
Bodies in the